So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Ask YP Live Now show. This is a show focused on positive living, living with passion, having a work life balance, and most importantly, making the world a better place. And this evening, we've got a special guest with us. His name is Richard Caballero, and I'll get Richard to introduce himself. So, Richard, say hi and then tell us a little bit about yourself, okay?
Hey YP, thanks for inviting me. Glad to be here. So just a little bit about myself. I'm Filipino Canadian. I was born in the Philippines, but I grew up. I did most of my upbringing and school in Toronto, Canada. And then after school, I joined Hewlett Packard for over 13 years, and had assignments in Canada and Hong Kong and Europe. So my background is more technology and Healthy Mind Solutions, and the current software that we're introducing to the Philippines is one of the things that I'm really passionate about, because it combines my advocacy as well as a sense of purpose in really helping a lot of people.
Okay. So Richard, you say that you are basically based in Toronto, Canada, right? Yes,
I go back and forth. Like I'm partly
okay.
based in Toronto, Canada. I'm also based in Manila, Philippines, where I'm
Okay, so I'm
currently
just
right
gonna
now.
ask you, what's the temperature in Toronto right now? I believe it's quite kind of cold.
I think it would be -5 or -10.
Wow. Okay. So for -5, -10, and coming to Manila, I think you've been in the Philippines only what, less than a week. Okay. To
A week?
usually about
Yeah.
34,
It's
35
+30
humid.
now.
Sorry.
It's
About a week.
+30.
Okay. How are you coping?
Other than the jet lag, pretty good. I mean, it is quite a transition coming from a very cold country, especially now it's winter right now in Canada. So my kids are skiing and there's snowboarding. But coming to the Philippines is always almost coming home. So I always enjoy the hot weather.
Okay. So it's like a very big sauna, right? Okay. Right. Okay. So just now you're
Yeah, but
mentioning
this
that,
is the best time of the year. It's the best time of the year in the Philippines, right? January, February,
oh,
March, leading
okay. Oh,
into the summer is the
okay.
best time of the year.
Okay. I wish I can travel. Fingers crossed, maybe within 6 to 8 months. Okay. Right. So you're mentioning, just now about, some social advocacy, and you talk about, starting a mental health, business in the Philippines. What motivated you to start, the Healthy Mind Solutions? Can you tell us a little bit more about your motivation? Yeah.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, my background is technology and specifically software technology. So I have worked for some of the software technologies, big global companies such as Corel, something in the
Mm-hmm.
security business called iMetis. I was VP of global sales for iMetis, covering over 50 countries. So, as I see all of this new technology and software that's being introduced all over the world, one of the key things that really I was looking for was something that I can tie up advocacy as well as really innovative solution. And when I saw this, when we started developing this Healthy Mind Solution software, it really combined that passion of mine towards really trying to make a difference, but at the same time, it's really at the leading edge of technology, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I could have started Healthy Mind Solutions in any country, because it's a quite
Okay.
a web-based solution. But I decided to start it in the Philippines because it really addresses a lot of the barriers of mental illness, of mental wellness, and this is not unique to the Philippines, right? It's pretty much the
Yeah.
same for all of Asia, which is the stigma, right? The overarching mission of Healthy Mind Solutions is really to break that stigma, and that stigma is about really the 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 stigmatization, the discrimination, the judgment when you have a mental
That's
illness, right?
true.
The
Yeah.
objective is to normalize the discussion so that you know few years from now, 5 years from now, similar to how cancer was 10 years ago, nobody wants to talk about cancer. right? But now it's just part
Mm.
of our discussion. My objective and my mission is to really bring to the forefront of discussion of mental illness and normalize it, so people suffering from it feels like they have an ally, and that what they're feeling is normal. It's not unique to themselves.
Yeah. And especially, in a work environment, isn't it? People are afraid to let known that they've got anxiety or depression, which is actually not the most. Let me phrase it correctly. These are the most common symptoms we see around. Okay, and people are afraid to let it be known even to their best friends at work, because that could, lead them to losing their job. It puts a lot of pressure, isn't it? Yeah, on the individual.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so mental wellness at the workplace brings a different dimension to it, because
Okay.
there's always the risk of somebody knowing about it and using that knowledge to terminate you, right? And that's part of the reason why, even in the Philippines, we estimate that out of 110 million people, up to 25% of the population is suffering in some shape or form of mental illness, either anxiety, depression. This whole pandemic has really started uh, people recognizing that they've never had any symptoms before of anxiety or depression, such as
Mm,
irritability, lack of sleep. But for the first time, they're starting to experience it, right? And so,
mhm,
by experiencing it, they really are would like to get some help, but they're hesitant, right? They're hesitant because they don't want to be judged, they don't want to be discriminated, especially at the workplace. So we
mm,
estimate that out of I guess 110 million, there's 6 million that are documented that are suffering in the Philippines of anxiety and depression, but there's a bigger majority of 20 that are what we call suffering in silence. So these are people that are currently suffering at some shape or form of mental illness, but are afraid to raise their hand and say,
mm,
listen, I need some help. And so you can imagine the impact at the workplace. The last data we said is 25% of the workforce in the Philippines are thinking of leaving their current jobs, right? There's
wow,
all of the
that's
data
very
came out
high.
of the Philippines that shows that 35% of employees, 35% of employees, 2 hours out of every day, they're unproductive because of mental illness, right?
two
And so
hours.
that's huge. The impact on the workforce, right? It's bad enough that a
Mm,
lot of the businesses are closing. It's bad enough that people are losing their jobs. But when they do have a job, they're still unproductive because of the impact
mm,
of mental illness. So this is a silent killer. So this mental illness, the more that we try to normalize the discussion, the more that we try to put it forefront and recognize that it is an issue, the more that people will feel have the courage to say, yes, I'm having a problem, I need help.
thanks, Richard. And those of who just joined this program, this is the Ask YP Life Now show. This is a show focused on positive living, having work-life balance, living a life of passion, and making the world a better place. And we have with us this morning, afternoon, and evening, depending on which part of the world you are in. We have Mr. Richard Caballero, the founder of Healthy Mind Solution, a mental health. What do you call that? A web-based mental
A
health
web-based mental health platform.
platform. Okay, right. That is primarily just launched in the Philippines, but it's something that can be used anywhere, isn't it?
Yes.
So Richard, can you speak into this? Like some people might be wondering, hey, if it's just online web thing, how can it actually help people? How would a program like this be able to help people with in their mental wellness, and also in the workplace? How can employers, how can business owners use this web-based application to have a more robust, a better, mental health workplace? Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the challenges, at least we have in the Philippines, and there are three main challenges we have in the Philippines. One is, as I mentioned to you, is the cultural stigmatization, right? Number two,
Mm-hmm.
the number two challenges of mental health in the Philippines is the accessibility. The fact is,
Okay.
there's only 461 psychologists per 10,000 of the
Huh.
population, which is very small, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Australia, I think
Yeah.
it's 30,000 per 100,000. So uh, the fact is, there's just not enough psychiatrists, therapists to address the needs of everyone. The other
Mm-hmm.
thing is the fact that most of the facilities are concentrated in Manila, right? So if you live in
Okay.
Visayas and the south in Mindanao, you don't have any type of resource if you're suffering from mental illness. So the accessibility, the ability to find the right therapist is a huge problem, right, in the Philippines. And the third one is the affordability. Affordability in the sense that the average salary of Filipinos are 14,000 pesos a month. Yet an average therapy is between 3,000 to 10,000. So it's a
Wow.
huge chunk towards their monthly salary, even if they find a therapist that they want, that they can go to, or if they want to. And so these three main problems is why we started our platform called Mindworks. It really addresses all three key problems because it's anonymous, it's a web based, it's accessible 24/7, and we made sure that it's affordable on an annual license so that similar to how you would have a annual physical checkup, this will be your annual mental health checkup
Mm.
because you have a license, a yearly license. So you could go and check yourself up, make sure that you're okay at any time through the year, right? And so from a workplace standpoint, the idea is for HR managers, for leaders to really enable their employees to have this tool at their disposal to enable them to learn how to cope with the stresses of anxiety and depression. Because you know what? If you've ever suffered from anxiety and depression, it usually happens at night. And at night, you
Okay.
usually don't have the resources available to you, right? And
Mm-hmm.
anxiety
Mm-hmm.
and depression is something that needs to be addressed immediately, right? You can't wait 3 weeks when the therapist is available, right? You can't wait till the next day, especially when you're suffering through anxiety and depression. So, what the platform does is really enable the user to have almost like a therapist nearby at their beck and call 24/7 wherever they are.
Hmm. I remember there's many, many years back, what, about 5, 6 years back, I was going through a period of depression, business related. And I made an appointment with a particular place, for to see a clinical psychologist. And guess what? The waiting list was 2 weeks. So the joke was that, me being me, very positive and very analytical, by the time I went to see the clinical psychologist, I was telling her, it was a her, no, yeah, it was a her, I was telling her, this is the situation I have, and this is the analysis of what I think I'm going through. And there's only one visit. She told me that you don't need me. You already figured it out. You should be okay. So you're right,
That's typical.
So when you need
That's
it most,
typical
you're not
YP, right? You're telling the therapist your diagnosis.
there. Because I was googling up a lot of things, and just telling, I think this is what I'm suffering from. And she basically says, you know, actually what she's telling me is that if you can be rational enough to analyze yourself and know what you think you're suffering, you're not suffering from anything. You're okay. So I
Yeah.
think, in the Australian approach to things is that they don't want to treat you, unless they really need to. Yeah. So something like this, if I had that, the application, it would have been good because then I could do some form of test, isn't it, to find out where I am, and then to have some, what do you call that? The exercises or something.
The cognitive behavior therapy courses.
Uh huh. Yeah.
The
So I
cognitive
can
behavior.
basically.
So
Yeah.
cognitive behavior therapy is a well-known psychotherapy approach, and it's really effective because what it does is it rewires your perspective on things. Anxiety and depression is all about your perspective or your environment. Your environment
Okay.
has to change, but for some reason you've started looking at your environment differently, just based on certain assumptions and certain perceptions. What cognitive behavior therapy enables you to do is kind of rewire that thinking process so that you start looking the right way about your environment and your situation. The reason why it's effective is because it's sustainable, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
the analogy is giving someone a fish to feed themselves versus some teaching someone to fish, which will feed them for a lifetime. So let me give you an example, right? It gives what cognitive behavior therapy, it really empowers you to really understand who you are and really understand your triggers. And I call that trigger because each one has a different trigger. So let me share with you my trigger, right? And after
Okay.
going through the cognitive behavior therapy, I realized that I have three triggers, right? One of
Oh,
my
okay.
trigger is related to financial, right? Anything and
Okay.
everybody can relate to this, right? Especially in the pandemic, financial is always an issue. Whenever you have problems with financial, either you yourself, professionally, or finally, it causes a lot of stress, right? Number
Mhm.
two is also about your health. Anything related to your health, it will cause you a lot of stress, right? And number three, anything related to your relationships. If you had fight with a work, if you had the fight and thing. So part of the recognition for me is understanding those three stressors and when the triggers and when they start happening. As soon as one happens, I'm very conscious to stay away on the other two. As soon as
Mhm.
the second one hits, I'm on my knees because I know that I'm already functioning half. As if all
Oh,
of the
okay.
three triggers hits, I'm on the ground, right?
Mhm.
So part of the self reflection and the self empowerment is really understanding what's triggering your depression, what's triggering your anxiety, so that you can manage your environment, so that you're able to now understand what's causing it and how do you handle it. So that by learning it, it's not you're not actually putting a band-aid solution. You're giving someone a lifelong skill to handle future stressors and triggers for the rest of their life.
Okay. And so when somebody uses that web-based application, is there any further support? In terms of, is there a community? Is there a helpline? What else can they do?
So the web-based, first of all, the web-based solution. I think your previous question is also I'll answer that is based on 15 years of research. So we've
Okay.
researched clinically, and we've published all the clinical research that shows that a web-based psychotherapy solution, it works. We have over 140,000 users globally already, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in every solution, there needs to be a total package. You need to have an assessment that enables you to
Okay.
determine what's your current mental state. Number two, you got to have what we call the cognitive behavior therapy courses that enables you
Okay.
to recover if you are showing any signs of anxiety and depression. And there's different courses. There's anxiety, overcoming depression. There is handling relationships. There's grief and loss. Those are cognitive behavior that's very prevalent,
Mm.
especially now with the pandemic. A lot of people have known somebody that have passed away. So grief and loss is another course that's very relevant. But the third component of the MindWorks is the community forum, the 140,000 users that are going through the same journey as you are, that have addressed for the most part most of the issues that have regarding anxiety and depression. And what they do is they log it, right, and they share their experiences, and it's monitored by therapists. And that's where a lot of our users are finding a lot of relief, and how other people are actually coping with their own challenges and their own mental illness that are very similar to them. And that's what
Mm.
provides them that ongoing support. So you have the assessment, you have the cognitive behavior therapy course, and you have the ongoing support from the community.
So that's great. You have to have all three things. So just to recap, so that to make sure I get it right. So you got the assessment, you got the cognitive behavior what therapy courses, okay, that you
Correct.
help you help yourself with that, right? Self help, and then the last bit is you got a community support of people going through similar conditions, right? Okay. So with this program here, are you also working with any other organizations or the medical profession, so that people, if they want to go beyond just using what do you say, the MindWorks, right? The MindWorks package, would they be able to access anything further? Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things that we are very cognizant is that in the spectrum of mental illness, our platform
Mhm.
works very well upstream, right? Which means mild to moderate anxiety and depression. The
Okay.
downstream, further down the spectrum, we call that, severe depression, trauma, suicidal,
Mhm.
right? So if you look at the whole spectrum, ours is really geared toward the front end, the preventative one, because we know
Okay.
that downstream they need medication and they need therapy for the most part. Ours will just be a
Okay.
complementary offering. Now, what we
Mhm.
have is, although ours is a software, what we're developing right now is the ability to have therapists on our group to be able to accept people that may have an additional need in addition to just doing the web based, right? So
Okay.
that they have the both choices of web based and also the therapist. Because I think if you go to the heart of the issue, for people that do not want to be identified, they're very hesitant to go to a therapist, right? That's the
Mm.
whole reason why they're sitting on the sidelines. That's the reason why they haven't availed any help before, is because they don't want to be identified. Otherwise, they would have gone to the therapist already. And so, for the
Mm.
most part, the target market of the platform is really the silent people suffering that don't want to be identified, but still needs the help, still needs the relief, and they want to do it on their own. They want to use it by themselves. They don't want anybody, knowing that they're suffering, because again, the stigmatization is there. So the answer is yes. We have both options.
Okay. And for those of you who are listening in, if you're a business owner, Richard was sharing that the drop in productivity, the absenteeism, actually we have got major impact on the bottom line, right? So so I'm going to ask Richard this question, for the owners listening in, the employees listening in, people in HR departments listening, what are your tips, Richard, for people in these positions to help create a more, I would say, more positive or more supportive mental, what do you call that, a mental health environment in their workplace? Yep. What can they do?
So let me answer that by telling a story, right?
Okay.
So I have a good friend that have over 300 employees. They're all frontliners. They're right there.
Okay.
They're serving, really, a lot of addressing all these pandemic issues. They're all frontliners, and part of his benefits plan, just like a lot of companies in the Philippines, they have, through their insurance, they partnered with a therapy group that makes it available for their frontliners to avail that therapy session one on one for free. It's a very expensive thing that a friend of mine who's the business owner has paid for. In the last
Mm-hmm.
year, there's not one that took advantage of that service. And when they
Mm-hmm.
looked at why, they said, "Sir, we do not want our workplace knowing that we're suffering from anxiety and depression," right?
Wow.
Because we are
Mm.
afraid that the information will come back to my workplace. So you can see the stigma, you can see the hesitation, because they're really afraid that it will be used against them, right? And so the anonymity is very, very important. Now, having told that story, um, one of the biggest tips, one of the most important tips that I advise HR and leadership and the leadership of any management, if you're serious about this, if you really believe that by investing on mental health tools and resources, you need to set the tone from the top. The only
Mm.
way your employees will subscribe to this mental health tools is when the leadership or the HR management says, "Listen, we see mental health as important as our bottom line. We see mental health as important as our physical health. And so please take all you need to make sure you're well," right? That simple
Mm.
endorsement, that simple tone from the top will do huge in terms of giving permission to your employees to go ahead and seek the help they need, and to raise their hand and saying, "Listen, I'm suffering," right?
Mm.
And this is tough because Asian culture is not used to this, right? It's a sign of weakness,
Yeah.
right? And so, but for business owners to really have sustainable change, and for business owners to really be able to get the buy-in of the employees, You need to set the tone from the top. You need to lead from the front, right? You need to actually make a categorical statement that says the mental health of my employees is important to me. Because in the long
Mm-hmm.
run, the data speaks for itself. If you don't invest on the mental health of your employees, they are becoming unproductive slowly and surely. And guess what? They just end up leaving without letting you know. And so all those investments that you made of hiring the person, of training the person, and not being able to support them on the time of need just goes out the door,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So
So
I hope
from
I
what
answered
I
your
get,
question, YP.
help me to see that I got it right. So I think the very first thing you shared with is the anonymity, isn't it? Because people are afraid to be identified. So we need to have the uh, where possible, people can get help anonymously. And then the other thing I was saying is that leadership from the top, meaning that you got to be supportive of people to raise their hands and say, I need help. Are these the two things? Yeah.
Tone from the top, right? That's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
It needs to be anonymous, right? But you also
Yeah.
need to make sure that you, in every communication from the HR, you're
Okay.
really encouraging people to be well. Give them
Okay.
permission to see the tools that they have, the resources they have, to
Mhm.
be able to be well mentally. Because
Okay.
if they're not, they could be in the office, but they're not productive, right? And
Okay.
one of the things that I'm very pleased to see is small businesses, companies in the Philippines are recognizing that the mental wellness doesn't stop with the employee. Part of the reason why that employee is 20% unproductive during the day is they're thinking about their family at home that's suffering from mental illness,
Okay. That's
right?
true.
And
That's
so
true.
what
Yeah.
I'm starting to see, which is a great thing, is they're starting to extend that benefit, extend that support to the employees' families, because they realize that, it's very short-sighted to just take care of the employee when the employee may not be thinking about work. They're thinking about taking care of their families.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, we got some comments in the chat group that say totally agree. Okay, so we won't read out the names. Uh, but that's true, right? I was just talking to a friend who was going through depression. Again, like we said, the pandemic has caused a lot of stress for business owners, cash flow, and trying to make sure that the business takes over and we've got enough to pay salaries and so on. And imagine what this person was telling me, that the depression had caused this person not want to turn up for work, and even when turn up at work, there is zero motivation to get anything done. So you're saying that the productivity could drop by 20%. Maybe in reality it could be even more than 20%. So can you imagine running a businesses where people turn up
But
with
but
this with
YP,
the engine switched off, right?
and this is, you and I, YP, know this because we have clients that are experiencing this firsthand, where
Mm,
their employees doesn't feel engaged, right? They're
mm,
demotivated, right? And guess what?
mm,
When they ask them what the problem is, they say nothing. And guess what? The next day
mm,
they just quit, right?
mm,
That's the sign that management has failed to really open the
mm,
conversation line so that the employees feel comfortable to raise their hand and saying, listen, I'm struggling, I need help,
mm.
right? And so, I mean, mental health at the workplace is really downstream, and it's really the byproduct of a potential organization or leadership or management issue. I hate to say that.
Mm,
They come on hand in hand,
okay.
especially at the workplace, right? The reason
Mm,
why people are stressed is probably because some of the policies and procedures and practices that management has implemented. Because one of the
true,
things that
very
I know
true.
for sure, right? For sure, this whole pandemic has really challenged the traditional mindset of having an employee in your office watch them, the managers watching them, right? So now they're remote, they're working from home, and guess what? The natural tendency of the manager is to micromanage,
Mm,
right? Which adds more pressure, which adds more stress. So you would think that by being at home that you would have some kind of relief. No, this whole pandemic with the working from home has really driven a new set of dynamics of stressors that a lot of our people at the workplace are suffering.
Mm. And you hit on something very important, Richard. And I think this is management or leadership 101. The job of a leader or a manager is to make the employee feel safe, isn't it? If the employee is always worrying about whether I'm going to keep my job, whether am I going to survive the pandemic and so on, then this stress will cause them to be, instead of making them productive, making them motivated, they're going to be demotivated and worrying all the time. So you're right. Having new policies, having new ways for the company to manage the pandemic or the crisis actually worries the employees a lot. So I remember, way back when the pandemic started. So for my own business in the Philippines, we sat down with the senior management and told them that other people are cutting staff, they're cutting salaries, they're terminating, reducing work hours. We want you to give your assurance to you that this is not going to happen in our company. Nobody's going to lose their job. Nobody's going to be, a sacrifice in any way for the company's survival. But we only need one thing. So now that you're safe and secure, we've got to do whatever it takes to help the community survive. Okay, and that's why in the last 2 years, I believe that that's one of the main reasons why our organization did so well, because we kept our employees assured and they feel safe. Right.
That's at the heart of a servant, what we call a servant leadership style of management, right? Which is you try
Uh-huh.
to eliminate all the obstacles, all the concerns, all the problems of the employees, so that they don't have an excuse not to perform, right? And so if you do that, if you take care of their family, you take care of their mental health, people people naturally want to do a good job, right? People don't wake up in the morning thinking they're going to do a bad job.
Yeah.
Every one of us wake up in the morning thinking they're going to do a great job. It's up to the managers and the leaders of every company
Mm.
to create the environment so that your employees realize that potential. Every employee
Mm.
that walks out the door and leaves your company, 50% of the accountability is to the managers and to the leaders, because you failed to create an environment where that employee was able to realize their potential and even exceed it.
Yeah, that's right. And we got one of our participants sharing that, what you have is perfect for those people who've got no power to let others know what they're experiencing and dealing with. Okay, right. So, having the mind works, you said the package, actually allows in an anonymous way allows employees to recognize that they've got challenges and be proactive about it, right? So, um, what's your
Let me
website
hold
again?
on. This is a really I'm just looking at the chat chat box, YP. If you don't mind me
Okay,
just answering one of this, right?
okay.
Um, it said I've been working from home for about a year now, and I could spend days not talking to anyone. When I don't have to go anywhere to work, I did notice a change in my mental health. My question is, how can I have a healthy work-life balance when working from home? So, um, everybody's going through at some level through this pandemic, right?
Hmm.
Not everybody's immune, um, but let me share with you something that works for me, right?
Okay.
So in every day, I try to find things that brings me joy, and that activity, I'm the only one that understands it because it brings me joy, right? So, for
Hmm.
example, what brings me joy is when I listen to specific music that of my high school days that makes me dance.
Oh,
So as I'm working, I'm dancing, but it just brings
okay.
back so much memories of me when I was growing up, and those were happy times. But those are very specific to me. Somebody listening to this and watching me dance may think this guy is a fool, right? But that moment in time during the day is a break in the monotony, and it's cheap,
Hmm.
and it's very personal. So what I encourage you to do, find that joy, that you have every day. Find that activity that you find joy, even if it's just for a short period of time, because that will bring you back to reality. That will bring you back to the good old days when you have a well balanced life. So don't let the situation overpower you. Take control of it and force yourself to have fun and enjoy it.
Very good tip, Richard. And I think I'll end with that tip for all our listeners. Okay, so find that little moment of joy that will bring you back to the. Can I use the word good old days?
Yeah, the
Right.
good old days. We're dating ourselves.
Yeah, and bring back all these happy memories or happy experiences. Yeah. So, Richard, if people want to find out a bit more about, your MyWorks program, I'm going to put your website. I just go in the website and I'm just going to put it as a banner across. And you just help me confirm that this is right. Okay. So you're interested to
Can
find
I
out
just
more.
leave
And
one last Can I just leave
okay.
one last word, YP, if I may,
Yeah, sure,
and just
sure.
ask your audience? If there's one request, it's just please be kind to one another. Everybody's going through this pandemic on their own, at their own levels, at their own challenges. People that you meet, you don't know the challenges or the problems they're having, right? Everybody could just be showing a face because they don't want to show that they're suffering. So just be kind. Let's be kind to one another, and together we'll get through this.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Okay, so take a okay. Anyway, if you're wherever platform you're listening in, this show is gonna be recorded, and then you can always come back to this. So take out your handphone. Nowadays we all know how to use our handphone as a camera. Take a snapshot of this website where you can explore a little bit more. And again, this is the YP Live, Ask YP live show where you can ask any questions and we're going to give you straight out answers. Okay. Right. So letting you know that I'm actually running a boot camp. Okay. I run a work less and more boot camp to help people work 20 hours less and become 10 times wealthier in, let's say, 5 years, so that you've got more time and financial freedom to live a life of passion. So I'm just going to put up there. This is the link to the boot camp. It's coming up next weekend, Friday and Saturday. It's a 2 full day boot camp. So this is going to be in London time, 8:30 in the morning, London, and finishes at 5 on a Friday and a Saturday. Okay, so you can go to this website here and book in for the boot camp. And if you want to have a free ticket, very easy. Next one here. This is actually another one. This is the same boot camp, but I'm going to have a little challenge. There are some activities you can do that will help you get a free ticket. Okay, so just enroll for this little challenge, and then maybe you get a free ticket for this, right? And lastly, we want to thank you so much for joining us. And this is my little gift to you. I've written a book, and this is up on Amazon. 10 proven strategies to work less and more, but you can have it for free. Okay, just go to this website here and click on this link, and you can have a copy of this book for free, right? So with this, I wish you all a good evening or a good morning or a good afternoon, and enjoy the rest of your day. And once again, Richard, thank you so much for coming on the show and
Thank
sharing
you.
with us. Okay, so don't run now. I'm just gonna end the show. Yeah. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
that's it. Thank you, everybody. Yeah.